All right, so joining me for our first episode of season 2 of the Norwalk Film Festival Podcast is the writer and director of Nana, Hillary Carrigan. Hillary, thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me and watching it and having it part of your program. Like it's such a cool honor. I'm so happy to be here.
No, we're happy to have you. It's a lovely film, and I mean, I was watching it. I was taken, it hit me. It's very heartfelt, and it's a great story about, two people just trying to find their way in different stages of their life, and so it's great. And so
thank you so much.
Just to give our audience, I'll just read your log line.
Oh, sure.
A standing Sunday lunch is born after Nana invites herself to her granddaughter's first. Man, I'm just going to start again. Just to give our audience a little overview of what your film is. The log line is: a standing Sunday lunch is born after Nana invites herself to her granddaughter's 5th floor walk-up.
Yes.
So it's, as I said, it's great. And we're very happy to have it as part of our festival.
It's an honor. It's cool.
Yeah. So before we talk about Nana, it's always great to go back and talk about how you got started. Like, what was there anything specifically that ignited your love of filmmaking, or, how did you get started in wanting to be a writer director?
I suppose that's a long story. I do, because I have I have these like specific, I guess it's not specific moments, but like a breadcrumb trail that's sort of led me here. I have this burning weird obsession with trying to understand what movie magic is, or like why things like feels so magical when you watch a movie and it hits you, or it lasts with you, or it's like your favorite, or you just like the credits roll and it's staying with you the next day. Like, what is that? And so that took me into college, because I was like, it's the music, I was like, it's film score. And so I went to a community college and a radio TV program in order to do just that. Like, I was like, I'm going to compose music for the movies, because that's where the feeling is, And in that program, I found editing. That was just part of the course. And I thought, oh, this has to be it. Like, you're creating the illusion here, you're crafting and reshaping it. Like, you can do things you never thought you could do with the material that you had at hand. And so I was following that thread for a long time, and I'm still following this sort of breadcrumb trail of like, maybe it's even before that, like maybe the pieces before you're in the editing room, or when the magic happens, it's the actors, it's the writing. And, I really think it's all of these things. Like we know that movie making, like we hear about that. That's like so textbook that it's the collaborative thing. But I think for myself, it's trying to find out, like, I've been fortunate to work on films, whether they're short or feature. And it's like, making a film, what does that mean for you? Like, because some people will hit that, some people will find their spot, like that piece in the puzzle, when it's like, you might want to be a grip or something, and that's you making movies. And like, for me, I feel like I'm still searching. So Nana was one of these things. I was like, on the one hand, I'm still trying to find this thread in myself, which is like, what does movie making and movie magic feel like for me? And then on a practical level, I was like, I have to try. Like, I have to try this at some point. Making Nana was calling my own bluff. It was like, I can't be talking myself out of this for so long. I have to try once, and I have to allow myself to try and try again, or try and fail if failure is an option, but like to not be afraid to just see if this is what it is for me. And I think it is. Like, this felt very much like movie making and magic. Me, and it's in its own little small way,
No, absolutely. And I think you're right. It's like, there are just those like indelible qualities of a film when you see it, that like, and it's very hard to point to, oh, it was the actor's performance or whatever. It's just kind of when all those pieces, like one by one, fall into place and make a perfect little thing that strikes a chord. And it might, what strikes your chord might not strike my chord, which is always like it's like another crazy thing about art and filmmaking, especially to me, is like, like, I can watch something and be like, God, I'm going to watch that 100 times. It's my favorite thing ever. And then like somebody you're sitting next to is like, thought it was garbage.
Yes,
So, but anyway.
it's so true that like I went to a movie recently with my friends and I was too slow to buy tickets with them. So this movie theater has the ground floor
Oh,
and the balcony. And so my friends are on the ground floor watching this movie and I was like, see you later, see you after. And I sat up on the balcony and watched it. And as the credits hit, I was like, that was dope. Who am I going to take to see this next? Like that was that was bizarre, And then I met with my friends and they were like, that was awful. Like, we're sorry we brought you here, It's so true. It strikes everybody up. Everybody has their sort of unique image of what makes something good, or like you're saying, the art that like really slaps for them,
Right.
And it's about just finding, you got to find your own path, your own stuff. Yeah.
So, I mean, first I'll say for a directorial debut, I think you did an amazing job putting all of these pieces together.
That's very generous. Thank you.
So, I mean, where did you? I mean, so you wrote the story as well. So where did you come up with the impetus to write the story, and what was your inspiration?
I think there were a few things. I remember them very clearly because this was like do or die for me. That was the energy I was that was the energy I was coming at this film with, for better or for worse, like I shared with you, there was that one thing of like, I have to call my own bluff. So number one, I was like, no matter what this project is, I want to find the thing that I feel like I can just take from beginning to end, nothing too lofty, but also not too small. So I had this idea of a granddaughter and a grandmother, like doing something silly together. Like, and for me, it was like, what if they were like scrolling Tinder? And that image haunted me forever. Like that was just haunting me. And so, eventually I made my way to sort of creating a scenario or something around this. Like I knew that was silly, but I also knew that the only projects that were easy enough for me to write were something that was like untangling your identity. I can't explain myself. This is just,
no, it's fine. That's why we have art, right?
Imagination. Yeah, I was like, I want like an untangling of like yourself. I think I was dealing with that, so I was like, naturally that'll be the thing that gets completed because I'm like obsessed with this right now. But I was like, I also need to pair that with a grandma and a granddaughter on Tinder. That was like my challenge. And
we'll have to say the scene of them sitting there, I mean, not really spoil it, like swiping Tinder on the projector is like, when it like cuts to that, I like laughed out loud because it's just like her, like the grandma's reaction, like of going through, and like I thought it was great. It's so fun.
Oh my god! Well, as a bonus to anybody who's enjoying this podcast and will check out the film, what's amazing is I watched it with an audience. I was so honored that it showed somewhere. I got a grant to make it, and they showed it at that local festival.
Okay.
And as we're watching, some of the audience members behind me were judging the people going by, which I was like, wow. And like these are my friends and family who I like put on the screen. And I was like, oh my gosh, like they're like like my brothers, they were like, pass. No. I was like, wow.
I was going to ask a little bit about that was one of my casting questions. It was like, where'd you find all these people to be your Tinder swipees?
I really wanted it to be people, like people I knew or something. So a lot of them are jazz musicians in the community as part of like of the film score group of people who were involved in this project. It's a lot of them. It's my brothers, my cousins, my family chat. There's somebody there who's like my mom. I had a phone call with my mom before we went into filming, and I was like, everything's going all right except this silly app that I made. I'm missing some photos. And she went to her local pizza place. Like she's in Pennsylvania, and she went out to the pizza place and said, my daughter's making a film. And so there's some pizza guys in there. It's just an amazing, it's the coolest thing.
That's so good.
They're all released. They signed a release form. It's like a real casting thing that happened, with a Google form. And
oh my gosh.
I treasure it. Like you just think it's nothing. Like, like I just took some images off Google or something. But no, it's like family and friends. And
that's so great. And then your family and friends get to see a little cameo in the film you made.
Oh, it's so cool. Yeah.
Is anybody like miffed that if they were somebody who got like a swipe left?
I was actually very particular about who I would do that to.
Yeah.
So it is that definitely, it's not strange. Like I think if they're being rejected, I know them
Yeah.
personally.
Okay.
So there would be they'd be the people who could take it, you know.
That's good.
That was, you're right. The casting went even farther, one step further, which is I did consider feelings.
Good. Good.
Yes.
So
And
for the
you
rest of
go,
your main cast, how did you
yeah.
find your two main characters?
This was largely luck, but also time. There was a
Yeah.
lot of timing because it was about matching these unrelated people, and I wanted you to sort of believe they would have been family, even though they're total
Hmm.
strangers. You know, um, there was somebody I really wanted. It was the actress who ended up being. I was fortunate enough that she joined us. So Kelly McCready is the actress who plays Natalie,
Hmm.
the sort of protagonist.
Yeah.
Um, I emailed her because I had seen her at a local film festival, and for more than 1 year. And I just loved her style. She seemed so natural,
Yeah.
and smart, you know. And so I got her info and I sent her an email. Really, like the second I was considered for this grant, which was really the impetus to finish this project and deliver it.
Hmm.
And she never replied. Like I think maybe a few weeks went by, and so I was like, well, shoot, like,
Yeah.
okay. And I was like, all right, well, I'll start looking for grandmas then,
Yeah.
or something. And I'm totally new to casting, so I just put a listing up on Backstage, and hundreds of hundreds of people
Yeah.
posted for this, and I kept seeing people, and I had some sort of favorites, but I didn't have that sort of like really like instinctive like feeling of like, oh, that's
Hmm.
that's her,
Yeah.
um, until one day, you know, one day Peppy Strife sent me an email, and she also auditioned on Backstage. Like she read some material, but she also
Hmm.
kind of stalked me on she got my information. And Peppy was unique to me because I mean she's so lovable. She also has that real quality. Like in the film, you can just feel it. She seems so
Hmm.
natural, and just the sound of her voice. Like it was just the sound of her voice for me. I was like, I was like, there's something here that feels a little New York or something. I just loved her. I loved her for her sound of her voice. And as I decided, I think it's going to be her. Like, I just have this feeling,
Hmm.
Kelly got back to me finally and was like, oh my gosh, I haven't replied to it, but I'd love to still be considered. And I thought they could look good together. So we just
Yeah.
tried it. We did a Zoom together where I could
Oh,
sit
great.
every together. But that's sort of how it happened. Like, I knew with Kelly, if I could have her, I knew I loved her because I saw her work before. So
Hmm.
I did open a casting call when she wasn't replying, but as soon as she
Yeah.
did have that feeling for me. But yeah, that was pretty much it. But Peppy found me, on the listing, but also online.
That's great.
Yeah, it's just a matter. There are so many capable people, and I'm in New York City here, so
Hmm.
the pool it's a large pool of really talented
Yeah.
people.
I always find that casting is the toughest part because it is kind of that like
Yes, like
that choice where you're like
yes,
I have
yes,
1,000 qualified and talented people.
yes.
How can I
Oh,
choose the one, or what if
God.
I choose the wrong one?
You have no
Like
idea. You're also
yeah,
like I'm like having PTSD because there
yeah,
were some people. The other part of casting, which is bananas, that I don't think gets talked about too much, is depending on who you're sort of like auditioning in your imagination, the flavor of the movie is changing all the time. So I had like
hmm,
running these different flavors of the film Nana. Like one might be a lot more delicate and kind of funny and tender. One might have been really hilarious, like a comedy, just based on the people bringing. Like I could
right,
direct them, but just who they are and what they're bringing to the table. And so that's a crazy part of casting. That like the whole tone can really like it's a roller coaster
yeah,
depending on the pieces that kind of people's schedules and availability or interest at any
yeah.
given time. It's a crazy ride.
It
Like
really
it's an
is, and
amazing
it's
job.
what
Like
just shows how everything gets shaped through different parts of the
yes,
process, right?
yes,
That like your
totally,
casting
totally.
implications and like I mean when I had a short that I did a year ago, and it was like when I did the casting, um, I had written one of the characters as like a little more like sarcastic and
Yeah.
like blah blah whatever, like had that little more of that vibe.
Mhm.
And then when the actress came in who we ended up casting and like she read, I was like, oh no, that's right, like
Oh,
that's
cool.
the character. So it was
Cool.
funny to like
Cool.
read when like she did it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Anyway, enough about me.
No,
So
I love it.
once
I love it.
once you got your casting got going, like how many days were you guys shooting? And it was nicely seemingly that you did it mostly in one location in that apartment. So tell us a little bit about the actual production process.
The production was I think we might have been 5 days, which is super generous for an indie short film. And this was like sort of the deals I had with the crew, and like we did it in a pretty manageable way, but it was a dream to me because we did, and maybe it wasn't 5 or 4. I split it across 2 weekends. So we had like our first 2 days, maybe up in a weekend somewhere up sometime. And then like nearly a week had passed and we were back all together for 3 days, I think. So those first 2 days would have been just with Kelly, and then the later 3 with Nana joining us because she's from Georgia. So she flew in.
Wow.
Yeah, nice. It was crazy. Yeah. I'm so honored. Like I would never, I was looking for locals because I was like, I'll be too scared, but it would just make it seem too serious. But she was just so perfect. So what I do think was amazing about that schedule, and that again is just happenstance, that's just the nature of like the people schedules, right? I, as a first-time filmmaker, had those 2 days, and then I had this amazing gift of like, what am I doing? I had like a time to like really recalibrate, let things soak in. Double check like what I was doing and how I was feeling and how my actors are feeling, and that kind of processing time is not afforded to people. No. Like you can have a really rough day, a really rough second day, and finally just kind of feel like get into it just by your last day. Like right, just warmed up and you're out of there. And so I felt so lucky. It was all in my neighborhood, and a lot of it in the apartment, like you said. That's the nature of the grant that I got. I got a grant from the local area. We have a film festival that grants filmmakers. It's so generous. It's so cool. And that was just part of this appeal for me. It felt like a lot of times when you are a young filmmaker, they say write with what you have, write to what you have. And that haunted me for maybe a decade, like, because I was guilty. Like, okay, I have so many like great friends or great like opportunities and stuff, and I'm just not maybe ready, or I think I just talked myself out of it in like a kind of perfectionism sort of a way. This particular film, I was like, I just wanted to reframe it all, which was like, I get to make something in my neighborhood. I get to make something in this apartment. I get to use Kelly McGrady, who said yes, she replied like, look out, and that's kind of how it went, it was small and contained pretty much for the most part. And when I watch it back, I'm like, this was very simple. Like I can feel my conservatism in moving the camera or the blocking and everything. It's very simple, but I think it also feels true to the story. So I'm proud of it, No,
I mean, I think you do a good job, like using that small space, but like showing the changes in the character and utilizing. I love the shot of like her sitting in the refrigerator at the beginning, like just like the fridge door open, like so just using different spaces, and whether they're sitting at the table or on the couch or whatever, like it feels different enough to me as a viewer that like you're not like, okay, cool, we're in the living room again or whatever. No,
Sean, you're going to be someone I call in the future. As I'm like going through edits, I'm going to be like, what do you think of this? I'm so glad to hear that, because that was something that you worry about, But I mean, there's a famous film, and I can't think about it, where it's like, I think a man is buried alive underground.
It's Ryan Reynolds. I think it's just called Buried or something. But
yes, and I thought about that. I haven't even seen that film. I just know it's been talked about, and I kept that in mind a lot, which is like, I have such a restricting, self-limiting, critic in my brain who's just like, your apartment's boring. It's small, And I was like, no, if people can shoot features in a coffin, I can do it, and I get all these rooms. I have all these angles, so, and no matter how small it was, I'm glad that I'm glad it felt varied enough. I tried. I really did.
No. So as you moved into the editing process, which you also did the editing for the film, did you find any changes in the story from how you shot it or how you wrote it, or was it kind of?
I did,
I guess were there any changes in that process?
There were, I think the one thing sort of that occurred to me is like, you kind of feel it in this. It's a little unsupported. Like when I watch it back with a very critical eye, I can feel where I would love to build something up, But I had this sort of scene where after the grandma decides she'll start coming over for this standing Sunday lunch, um, I sort of like, I had these scenes playing out pretty long. Like she would come back, she'd go, she'd come back. And when I was in the edit, I just thought if I could compress this or overlap this, like turning it into a montage almost, like just to give you the idea that she's coming over a lot. And it's supported by music. It sounds really intentional, but that was so compressed in the edit. And I wish I went farther with it, like more time could pass or something like that, you know? But I think like the order and where that went and how much we stretched it out, like I wish I did a few more of those or something. But that was purely a post-production thing. Like those were spread out. We were with Jasmine a little bit more sometimes. We had this whole scene in the park. It got cut. Like,
oh, really? Yeah.
You know, yeah. And not because of people's performances, purely because of the edit, you know, like it
just like timing and pacing.
Totally. Totally. It's like a whole kind of, there was this background character who played a role, and there was a moment of like catcalling and confusion while you're on the phone with Natalie and her friend, and it was so funny. But it was also like, just like I was telling you, you sort of, it was right at this time when you're just supposed to have a lot of time passing and establish that the grandma is coming over on a weekly basis. And the montage was doing that a little bit better or more effectively somehow. But yeah, just a pacing thing. It's so strange how that happens. Like,
well, something that reads on the page, or is like you're like, oh, this is so funny, and then when you see it laid out, you're like, oh, it is kind
funny,
of dragging it down. Oh yeah,
exactly,
I love it.
Exactly. It's like I still love this. It still works, but the movie somehow just feels like the movie still without it, maybe even more so. That's the worst part, is when good stuff has to hit the ground for the good of the movie. Yeah.
Well, if you ever have a DVD issue of it, you can have it as a deleted scenes section on the DVD menu.
Oh yeah. The making of the behind the scenes and deleted scenes. Yeah. Love that. Yeah, I totally love that. Yeah.
So this being your first film, and that you took it from beginning to end, what did you learn? What do you feel like you learned from it?
You know,
if anything, or you can say it was perfect and I'm great.
No, I'm still no. Like, I'm learning. I've learned so much from it. I'm still learning from it. Like I rewatched it.
You find like every time you watch it was kind of same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Every time you watch it, you see something else. It's totally the case with that. You know, there were a few things in this film where I thought, I don't have this quite figured out yet, but I'll figure it out while we're on set, you know? And I don't feel that way anymore. Like there was something in the writing where I just thought maybe this is a dialogue problem. Like I couldn't identify what it was. And it still is a passable, excellent scene. And I'm not even going to mention what it is, because I might get away with it with some people.
Don't draw attention to it.
I won't. But my takeaway was like, I remember in this process of bringing something from writing to a completed, piece, I remember feeling like, okay, I can find that on set. And it was, to me, I thought it was just in dialogue. And what I learned, that feeling for me was actually like, no, there was like a structural scene thing. I know that feeling now is that I just wanted to maybe rewrite something. And that's not about letting your actors improv. It's about just sort of like this setup or something, And those are such high level, like that to me is so, you only know that through experience,
Right.
Like
until you see it in the final thing and you're like, ooh, I missed.
Totally. Yeah. It's such a blessing, like to be even like able to be chewing on that. Like,
right.
So I think the major thing that I'd say I learned from this, and I hope like people kind of take away from it, is, I mean, definitely in the movie, I want people to feel how warm and hopeful it is. Like those sort of like, it's a really, it's not too heavy. I hope that it's like self-aware enough that people just feel sort of warm and cozy about it all somehow. Yeah. But I also want that because I'm trying to make also other people feel like that, like another filmmaker, like, I hope that people feel like you can try and try again, or try and fail, or redirect yourself. And I think those characters are sort of doing that. They're moving ahead in life, even though they faced something really hard. And I feel like that's what filmmaking is. You're just moving ahead through things that are really hard. And, nothing is perfect, same in life, and like films can't be perfect and scenes can't be perfect. And yet you have this like warm, hopeful, sweet, sincere thing. It's kind of what I hope that like people do take away from it is I suspect there's a lot of really great filmmakers out there who are just not allowing themselves to try. And not young filmmakers either. I think there's a lot of people over 30, over 40. I've met a few since I've made this project who are like, I really wanted to direct, or I really wanted to write. I'm grateful that you tried. And I'm like,
yeah,
do it. Like,
yeah.
like, I'm like, if you're really feeling that, you're really feeling like you want to be doing that, listen to yourself,
Yeah.
like listen to
Yeah, I
us.
mean, and to be honest, it doesn't matter if you're shooting something on your phone with people you got nearby, or if you hire a whole crew and do it. It's like, it's more
Yes.
about getting out there and getting the reps and figuring it out. And so
Totally. A lot of
it's
people,
great.
unfortunately, as you get older, your taste increases. And so
Yeah,
you don't
right.
allow yourself to make something, a little rough or something. But it's not about that. It's really about finding your way and expressing yourself and being kind to yourself and just playing and collaborating with people. It's the best part of, I think it's the best part of the magic of movies. Like it's
Oh, I
these
agree.
people.
It's
Yeah.
like, I mean, as I said, like the actor who came in and like changed my thought of a character, or like
Yes. Yeah.
working with the DP or whoever, who's like, how about what if we just did the shot slightly different? And you're like, oh yes, that
Yes.
collaboration is what makes it so great.
Totally. It's like all of these little pieces of magic and ideas are like floating around all the time.
You're just trying to catch them all.
Yeah, exactly. You just at least you want to like shepherd it and allow all of them to live long enough until that's the thing. I think I don't know if I've answered your question. I've just like rolled us through somewhere this weird space. But
No,
I guess this idea of like in taking a process from, just like it being a piece of imagination for me about like women scrolling on Tinder and identity,
Yeah.
To just like something I submitted to a film festival and it's here, something I learned really is exactly that. Like you want to shepherd everybody's ideas, like the good ones, and people's ideas or their sort of like these opportunities you have to do something, or the creativity, and sort of allow it to all live somehow. Because it's going to evolve, and you're in charge of taking all of those pieces and saying, I don't know yet. We're going to find out in the edit. I don't know yet if that's going to work or not. But if it does happen to work, we have a way of supporting it in the edit.
Right.
So if that joke in that improv is going to live, there's a way it can live, because we also listened to the DP who allowed us this extra shot, which would have helped the edit. It's a crazy thing. Like you have a microcosm of different movies there. It's crazy, but I think that's what I've learned is you do have to just sort of be really open-hearted, like have your direction, but remain totally open.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So now that you've made it through your first one, I mean, you're still in festivals and stuff. You've made it through. Are you working on anything next, or what do you got going on?
Oh, we've got a lot going on, which is amazing, I think, because when I started this project, I was like, this is it. I don't have anything. Somebody asked me before, like, what else are you doing? I was like, nothing. I was like, this is all consuming,
Like, I'm working on this. How can I do anything else?
And now I still have sort of like, Nana's living its own life, and that's so cool. And I love it, and I'm still learning from it, like I said. But I've also had the opportunity, whilst writing another short, like I have one that's sort of in its own little world. I don't know how much I should spill about it, because it's not like greenlit or anything. I'll give you a scoop, I guess. But I have a short film that's another one set in New York City. It's following a jazz musician, and so there's a song in there that I need commissioned, not released, like not rights to it, but just I needed to create a song, and so I've brought on a musician to just write a piece of music, and then we'll go from there. Awesome. So that's kind of out on the burner, but I was invited in the meantime to direct a short film for somebody else, and they who wrote it, which was something that was not on my bingo card.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's happening in 2025. It's called Deepest Corners, which is very cool. Also in the neighborhood here, so like we got it going on,
Yeah,
maybe that's why. Yeah, it's so silly. And editing. So I also, in addition to directing, I have these editing skills. It's just technical skills that are part of who I am, and I can do it. And it's so it's so fun to do it because I still get to learn about directing and the writing through the editing process with someone else who's learning about editing through me, So I'm editing this short film called Olive, which is the director's name is Tom Cook, and that's happening 2025. Yeah, so that'll be out soon. So like a bunch of great projects, I guess to sort of round out this whole like to round out our discussion, which was like I was calling my bluff, when I made Nana, I was just like, I think movie magic has to do with filmmaking, and I want to make something, which means writing and directing. And I've tried it and I stuck to it, even if sometimes I really was losing my nerve. I just committed to doing it, and now I have this opportunity to try again, not just for myself but with other people. So who knows?
Just goes to show that when you put yourself out there and you get something done, that you never know who's going to call or reach out and about collaborating and doing more. So
that's so great. It starts with you deciding, that you can,
Well, we're very happy that you made Nana, and very happy that it's a part of our festival.
I'm honored. I'm the honored one. This is so cool.
Everybody's gonna have to follow along and see what else, keep a tab on the rest of these projects. Can follow you on Instagram at _Hillary Carrigan. 2 L's, 2 R's.
Carrigan, that's right. Yep, you got it. The underscore at the top. Something else has it. There's lots of Hillary Carrigans.
Some other Hillary Carrigan got you. But we're very excited. The Norwalk Film Festival is January 10th through 12th, and Nana is screening the afternoon of the 12th in the 2 to 4 o'clock block. So be looking forward to seeing it then and seeing it in front of our audience. Thanks again for joining me, Hillary. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh, likewise. I could go on all night. This is it's just so fun. You're so fun to talk to.
It's a two-parter.
Yeah, two-parter. The making of movies.
Yeah.
Part 2.
All right.
Sean and
Thanks,
Hillary. Yeah, no problem. Thanks so much, Sean.